Well, everybody, it's good to be here. I suppose I say that every time, but I mean it every time, folks. It's good to be here. I don't know what to tell you. Easter's this coming weekend. I know what I'm going to tell you. That I have a grandson who was born a year ago in September that I've never seen. And I've had both of my shots, and my kids have had their shots in Chicago, and so it looks like this week we get to blast up for a day or so, and I get to see number 4 in that family, but I've never seen him. So he'll probably be scared to death of us and won't let me touch him, and all the things that a 7-month-old will do, but that's okay. He won't remember it, and I won't hold it against him. So there you go. It's odd that he's got 2 older brothers who are 8 and 6.5, almost 7. And all they want to do is come to our house and root through our attic. They are sure that in our attic there will be treasure. Go figure. Anyway, maybe there is if you're 6 and 8. Anyway, we are on... I'm still in the section on the faith of a Gentile woman. I'm in chapter 7, verses 24 through 30, actually. I'm going to read that section, the whole thing, after I pray. We probably will, I'm ready to move on, but it's probably good to put a good period end on this section, and then I'll come back next week and start the section on Jesus healing a deaf man. And can I tell you, I have been moved personally by that next section. I'm really anxious to get to that section because it has had a deep impact on my own soul, and I'll talk about it when I get to it, but this is really good stuff. These passages are just really, really good stuff, especially at this time in my life and in this time in the world. So let me pray, and then we'll jump into this. Lord, I pray that you'll help me to be cogent and represent you well. There's so much in these passages we could spend months and months diving into the details. But help me, Lord, to just bring to you the things that are important for your people to hear from me today. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I'm going to read the whole passage again just so we get the background, everything together, and we'll start talking about things in verse 28. So here we go. Then Jesus left Galilee and went north to the region of Tyre, and he didn't want anybody to know which house he was staying in, but he couldn't keep it a secret. Right away, a woman who had heard about him fell at his feet. Her little girl was possessed by an evil spirit, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And since she was a Gentile born in Syrian Phoenicia, Jesus told her, first I should feed the children, my own family, the Jews. And we talked about that addition, my own family, the Jews, last time, which is not in the Greek. But these translators felt that was the point of Jesus' statement there. You can look at last week's if you want to get more details on that. And he goes, it isn't right to take food from the children and throw it to the dogs. And if you recall, the dogs is little dogs, puppies, little house dogs is the word there. Diminutive is the noun is in the diminutive. She replied, that's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table are allowed to eat the scraps from the children's plates. Good answer, he said. Now go home, for the demon has left your daughter. And when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in bed, and the demon was gone. End of story. Now, some people say that this woman's response to Jesus when she says, that's true, Lord, but even the dogs under the table, when she says this, that she is aware of her place, that she is just a dog compared to the Jewish people. And now if that's what she meant, then this is like a hugely humiliating moment It's a realization that she has almost no value in the mind of most Jews. And that what she's saying is that she recognizes that she is no better than the dogs of that world that were really the scavengers of the world. And I talked about this last time, that now she is using the diminutive, and there's no record whatsoever of Jews referring to Gentiles as little dogs or puppies, little house dogs. There is of them calling them dogs, like the big dogs who go after the garbage and eat dead flesh and things like that. But these people would say, well, she knew her place, and since she recognized her place, Jesus is going to go, okay, so you know you're worthless. You're admitting it to me, but you're still coming to me even though you're worthless. You should be worthless and all that stuff. But then other people go, no, 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 no. Jesus is delighted by her response. It's like a humorous repartee, if you will, back and forth that they're doing. And he's, well, in Dr. Lane's book, he says that straight up that it delighted him to enter in such an interesting conversation. Now, I don't know if it goes that far. I don't know if it goes that far. But what she's done is pretty clever. And it doesn't really matter what Jesus's response might have been, because she wasn't asking for the whole meal. She wasn't asking for everything. She wasn't even asking to be fed to full satisfaction this one time. No, she's only asking for a crumb. That's what the word is. It's like a crumb. It's just something that when you're eating something, as someone is eating a piece of bread and a little bit falls off as you're chewing on it, and or picking it up and it falls to the ground. Something we would sweep up. And here's the deal. Her faith in Jesus' lordship over the demonic world was so strong. Her faith in Jesus' authority was so strong that she knew that it would only take how much of what he has to give us to take care of her problem? A crumb. This is a really interesting idea to me. There's something in her response when she says, this is what she says pretty much literally in the Greek, true Lord, and she calls him Kyrie. That word, well, by the way, not too long after this, that word that she calls Jesus by, which we translate Lord, it was against the law to use it for anybody other than Caesar. Now, this would not have been the case at this moment, but there's so much respect in this word that eventually Caesar himself does not allow anyone to use this word for anyone else as a signifier of who they are. Now, the word at this time is more like a respectful word, but her using it of a Jewish man who's come to a Gentile place is a bit unusual unless she has a very high opinion of him, because Gentiles, particularly Gentiles who are what? Well-to-do, living by Greek standards and things like that, would not naturally refer to Jewish men as Lord. The one who is in charge. But anyway, she says, true Lord, but even the little dogs under the table eat the crumbs from the children. And what she's implying in this statement that's important is that these little dogs belong to the family who's eating. They may not be the children, but they're still part of the family. The statement that she makes assumes that the children at the table would have no problem whatsoever with these little dogs being present in the family's dining area, under the table, eating what drops. They're not thinking about these dogs as being like they would not have naturally thought about the family's dog's job to be cleaning up after them. They just would have been fine with them under the table because they think of them as what? Part of what our family does. Now, this is probably true with a lot of you all out there, that you have a dog that you don't mind that it sits at your feet under the table when you're eating, or sits at your feet when you're watching the ball game and you got a bowl of popcorn. Do you go, oh no, there's a dog in here. We have food. There's a dog in the room. No, you don't think anything about it. And if a piece of popcorn falls out of the bowl and the dog grabs it, you go, oops. Gigi just got that piece of popcorn and you don't think about it. Or you go, did you like that? Or something? Yeah, I don't know. But, people just expect what? Their dogs to be present with the family. And this is what her statement implies. Okay, I get it. I'm a little dog. But the Jewish family should expect to be surrounded by little dogs because we're all part of the what? Same family. We belong in the household together. Now, this is a huge statement if you think about it. If you think about what this Gentile Syrophoenician woman is saying, she is so in tune with the fact that the Jews are the family of God, and yet she also believes that those who are not fully family, who represent those who just what? Surround the family and live alongside of them, they also should be able to get what? Something from the family meal. I'll just say that's a big deal. It's a big assumption, especially in a world. Now remember, I don't know, I said it I think last week, that when all things broke apart in 70 AD in Jerusalem, the people of this area took it upon themselves to slaughter a whole bunch of the Jews just because they'd been living in quiet animosity towards them for a long time. And when it looked like the Romans were okay with killing Jews, they killed some. So this is not a normal thing for a person from this area to have this kind of an attitude towards the Jewish people, to recognize their place and then her place in their family. Anyway, Jesus' response is interesting. He says nothing incantational. He never says a word to the demon. He doesn't say anything like that. He speaks only directly to the woman. Did you notice that? He goes, in the NLT, it says, good answer. I'm going to give you the raw Greek. It's not a little different than good answer. This is a great translation for understanding. And he said, but sometimes, but I scratch my head with everybody's translation. I suppose I should do one of my own. I'm kidding. I should not do one of my own. He says, because of this word, he's clearly speaking of her response there. Because of this word, go. That's what he says. Because of this word, go. The demon has gone out of your daughter. That's all he says. Because of this word, go. There's an interesting aspect to this go. Jesus' only word of command in this whole thing. He does not command the demon to do anything. He doesn't even speak to the demon. He tells her the word is hupage. It's a really strong imperative, and it means just go. Go! Because of this word, in other words, what you've just said to me, that you recognize your place in the wider picture, and you've referred to me as Lord, and you have great faith that I can take care of this simply by virtue of something in your heart says you believe that I can do this, go. The demon has left your daughter. Now, when he tells her to go, it's interesting. If you go and look at Matthew, the disciples, or she's in that telling, she's bugging them about this. And Jesus is not saying anything to her. And the disciples say to him, would you tell her to go? Would you tell her to go away? Literally, the disciples were trying to get him. Now, it doesn't say they were trying to tell her to go. He says they were trying to get Jesus to tell her to go away. And so here's the deal. Up to this point, as she's being encouraged to go away in some manner by Jesus' silence and by the disciples' attitude towards her, she refuses to go away as a sign of faith because she is so certain that Jesus can do this for her. And now he tells her to go. He doesn't say where. He just says, go. And then she does what? She goes as a sign of faith. Now he knows that she's going to go home to her daughter. But this is a very powerful moment on two levels. First, and this is really important to the bigger question of who is this man? Jesus is able to command demonic forces without saying a word to them. Such is his authority. I do not know how this works. I don't know him simply willing something in his spirit moves the dark world. Think about that. He doesn't, when I said he doesn't say anything incantational, that's what everybody would have expected. And actually in the next story, there's a thing where he says some things and he does some things that are easily mistaken as incantational. And we'll talk about that later. But that he would do if he was like a normal magician guy. He would say that there's all kinds of garbly-goop language that then mixed up funny words that magic people said back then. And the trick was that they had to say it exactly perfectly in the right spaces and the right kind of emphasis on different syllables and all that kind of stuff. And if they got it just right, then the demon had to do what they said because they were thinking it was like some language of the demons to say something. And this is how they worked. Not Jesus. He just says, because of what you said, go. The demons left your daughter. Okay, that's pretty strong, okay? That's who he is. All right, we'll start with that one. And it's her feeling is that he can heal her daughter. I find that also interesting, that almost all talk about demon possession and the casting out of demons and illness and everything is all talked about in the language of healing. And that's mostly because when this girl is possessed by this demon, she is in one way as ill as a person can be. And so they just think of it as healing. And I find that cool. There's no, when you get my notes, if you take them, you'll see that I say he doesn't do any of the expected miracle workers' gyrations. And that's a funny word. I don't know where I got it but that's actually what it is, because there's all kinds of, you can read them, there are all kinds of texts from that time about how to heal this and heal that and what to say and what to do. That stuff's out there. And the other thing is, when he says go, she just goes. She does not ask for any proof that he has granted her request. She doesn't go, why should I believe you? She doesn't say anything like that. She simply goes out of obedience. She obeys him. Now she does what he says, and faith. There's an interesting part of the Greek here that points to what happens when this woman returns home. It says, and when she arrived home, she found her little girl lying quietly in the bed and the demon was gone. The Greek actually literally says that she finds her daughter having been laid on the couch. That's how it expresses it. And the implication of this Greek is that something difficult had happened to get her there. Either something rowdy happened and she fell there in the process, or something happened and they had to pick her. Somebody had to pick her up and put her on the couch. Now, the point is that there was some sort of struggle in the leaving of the spirit. And we see this elsewhere. Demons do not want to leave the people that they are inhabiting. And they always seem to give them one last jolt before they obey Jesus. If you go to chapter 9 in Mark, verse 25, 26, something like that, you'll see that this happens. And the assumption by most scholars is that she was exhausted from whatever happened to her. We don't know what happened to her, but she was exhausted from not only the moment that this happened, that the demon left her, but from the suffering that she had done at the hands of this demon for who knows how long. I will say this. How we know what happened when the woman got home, I'm unsure. It doesn't say that any of the disciples followed her home. It doesn't say that she ran back to Jesus and announced that it worked. There's nothing in the text which gives us an understanding of how Mark knew, or Matthew, but apparently Jesus' healing of this young girl was reported back to the disciples, at least two of them, Peter and Matthew. And from all we can tell, I am confident that in the moment, there was no possible way. Can you imagine? I do not know what it looks like to have a little girl who is possessed by the devil, by the demon. All I can say is that it must have been terrible. These are communities unlike ours. We tend to hide our family things behind closed doors, and I'm sure that there are people who live right next door to people who have all kinds of issues in their home, and they're unaware of it. That world was not like that. This woman would have been known. Her child would have been known. This healing would have been immediately spread everywhere. I am certain that the news got back to Jesus. Now, he wouldn't have been surprised by the news, but it would have been something that the disciples themselves would have never forgotten. There's something interesting. I don't want to talk about this too long, but the picture of her calmly lying, resting on the couch, following what Jesus did for her. Man, I wish I could live my life like that. When I think about all that Jesus has done for me, I wish I could live my life calmly, resting in faith. Now, it wasn't the faith of the little girl, but we have a picture of peace restored. And not just to her, but to her mother, to her whole family. There's no mention of a father. But all that to say, the bottom line in this story is this, that an unclean Greek Gentile woman with a daughter who is possessed by an unclean spirit has enough faith in Jesus as the Lord to believe that he can heal her daughter, and that his simple response to her made the healing possible. This event shows us that the power of this Gentile's faith and this is important, and the concern of God for all people work together. In a wider context of this story, it tells us another aspect of who is this man. And he is a man who has authority to control the evil, dark forces of the world simply by the strength of his will, his unspoken will. I'm just saying. We should never forget that this story tells us even more truth about Jesus. He is someone with ultimate authority. And his desire is to use his authority to bring healing to those who place their faith in him. That is really, really powerful. Now, one last thing. The story has been widened and embellished a great deal over time. And I'm probably pretty sure I can say this, that most of you will not run out and read Pseudo Clementine's homilies. But should you will find in there that he gives us a name. Now, Pseudo-Clementine means they're not sure if the things are really by Clementine, but they sound like Clementine. He's an early church father. Not, oh, my darling Clementine, but it's a dude, okay? And anyway, the point is that in one of these thought to be but uncertain homilies, he names these people. Justa is the name of the woman, and the daughter's name is Bernice. Who'd have thought? And we have no idea whether that was true or not, but there we have it. So if you ever, like in a lot of Orthodox worlds, they just refer to her as Justa. And we're supposed to know the story. And they talk about Bernice, and we're supposed to know the story. But that's just the way it goes. We don't know whether that is true. But what we do know is that this whole section begins with scribes and Pharisees questioning Jesus about what his disciples are doing when they eat bread. And then when Jesus talks about it, his own disciples don't get what he means by it because they've never heard anybody talk like this. And what the end result is that we find a very unclean Gentile woman just wanting the crumbs from Jesus. We've been talking about bread the whole time and what goes in and what comes out. And what we see here is very profound. The scholars with their great and the disciples with their great access to Jesus are dumbfounded by what Jesus has to say about what makes a person ready for sacred purposes, but a woman that no one would have ever expected to understand any of this believes so much in Jesus' authority that she refuses to leave without at least a crumb from Jesus, and that crumb, she knows, is enough to change her entire life and the entire life of her family. Such is the authority and power of Jesus. And I want to just end by just saying this. I wonder often now about the true amount of access that we have to the power and authority of Jesus. And my thoughts are just this, that maybe all we need are crumbs of what he can really give us. He says we only need a mustard seed's worth of faith. It may be that all that we need is just a little bit of who he is, just enough to satisfy us, to change our whole lives and make us whole. This puts a whole new spin on my thinking related to the deeper things of God. Our deep things may only be crumbs, and only in the future when we're fully given to him for eternity and everything about us, his revelation to us is full and our revelation to him is full, then will we truly have a full meal's worth of Jesus. And until then, we just need a crumb because it will change everything. This is great stuff. Very, very devotional. I hope it was helpful. Next time we go on to a story I'm just excited as can be to talk about it. It's another Gentile who Jesus heals. Different way, a lot of different things, but all of it says one thing. Everybody is valuable to this man. Okay, thanks.